In the studio with me, former Chief Justice of Family Court, Chairman of the National Centre Against Bullying, Alistair Nicholson. Good morning.
Good morning.
Are we doing enough?
No, I don't think we are. I think that one of the problems with bullying is that a lot of this modern technology has crept up on us. And I think there was always a long-term attitude, it was something that happened at school that you grew out of. Then, of course, we started to realise that you don't necessarily grow out of it, and you get bullying in the industrial area, in the home. And then you add to that and superimpose on it the cyberbullying and the electronic media and the use of that for the purpose. You've got a whole new problem, and I don't think we've really addressed it.
Do you look at Twitter at any time?
I do, yes.
It's a pretty bitter medium, isn't it?
It can be, yes. In fact, I have a Twitter account, but I must say I think it needs to be treated with great care.
Yeah, and not taken too seriously, but that's easy to say if you're robust. If you take some of the criticisms, I just cop outright abuse, and that's fair enough. That's probably my job in a sense. But it could be really destructive for people.
It can be, and really wounding too, and the bitterness and the cloak of anonymity, I think, is the other problem. That if people are not prepared to put their name to something, they think they can get away with anything.
So do you think this social media, like Facebook, like Twitter, even like mobile phones, has increased bullying of adults?
I think it may have increased bullying of adults. I don't know that the figures would say that it has increased bullying of kids. On the other hand, I think the nature of the bullying is more damaging because it's anonymous. In most cases, it covers all their lives. You can't go home and get away from it. Because these kids all live on mobile phones and like these days, and so they're harassed all the time, and I think it has very serious effects on them.
Well, there's two areas there. What do parents do about it? Second, what does the law do about it?
Well, I think the parents have got a real responsibility here, and they've got too many responsibilities sometimes. But having been a parent and a grandparent now, I can understand all that. But this is a pretty significant area, and the trouble is that a lot of people of the older generation don't understand the use of the technology, and the kids tend to be a bit secretive about it. And I think parents have really got to themselves get to know what's going on and get to know how these things are used and what their kids are doing, and talk about it to them, and have the use of it in the open, so that they don't go off to their rooms and act in secret about what they're doing.
30% of young people say they're bullied every 2 weeks, and 10% every few weeks cyberbullying.
Yeah. That's about right.
Horrendous.
It is. It's terrible. And it's and the effects, I mean, the robust person can handle it, but a lot of people aren't robust, and the particularly vulnerable ones are the ones who tend to get targeted. So it's a vicious circle.
What can the law do about it?
The law can only do so much. I mean, I don't believe that the law can ever cure or prevent anything. But on the other hand, the law can set boundaries. The law can say, look, this sort of conduct is not acceptable, and it's so unacceptable that you've breached the criminal law. And that's something we've never done with bullying. We've got charges that you can lay for bullying conduct, and some people will say, well, you could charge people with all sorts of things, such as misusing a carriage service or something like that, and cover it. But I don't think that does cover it, because it doesn't bring home the message to people that bullying is an offence. And I think if they got the message that it was an offence, it would at least put them on notice that if they're going to behave like this, it's not just fun. It's not just having a loan of someone. You run the risk of breaking the law.
So do we need to rewrite the law? Do we need to be more specific?
I think so, yeah. I think we do. I think what my view is my view, the others at the seminar may take a different approach, but my view is that we really ought to create bullying as a specific offence. Now, New Zealand, its Law Commission has recommended that cyberbullying be a specific offence, and but their brief was only for cyberbullying, and I'd go a bit further and say that bullying as such should be regarded like assault or other forms of antisocial conduct as an offence. Not because I want to lock a whole lot of people up, far from it. What I see the law as an educative tool in this area, and I think if the law prescribes something, it does help educate people.
So you would make bullying a criminal offence?
Yes.
How would you define it, I wonder?
There's plenty of definitions, in fact, but the major definition is that it's a repeated act, intentional act, from a person exercising power over another person and denigrating them. That's the broad definition. You can add to it using the airwaves if you're talking about cyberbullying. But it's not difficult to define. And in fact, several Canadian provinces have done so. Ontario has done so in relation to cyberbullying, quite a good definition. Alberta, I think Nova Scotia is in the process. So, and they've done this really in response to the same sort of concerns that we're finding here.
And ultimately, would it need to carry, or if bad enough, a jail sentence?
It depends on the bullying, but the New Zealand approach is to have a 3-month sentence for cyberbullying, a maximum, but only to be used in bad cases. Normally it would be the subject of a warning, if it even got that far. I mean, the main work has to be done at home and at school, where someone says that's against the law. You've got to be very careful with that conduct. Police could often use warnings at the next level if it gets a bit bad. But very rarely would you expect anyone to be sentenced, and certainly not a kid, in those circumstances, except at that very extreme level. You've got the second level, though, and that's where the law was changed in Victoria in relation to Brodie Panlock's case.
Yeah.
And the New Zealanders say that there should be a serious offence of incitement of suicide, which I think has some merit. It's a very similar type of response to Brodie's law. Trouble with Brodie's law is, though, you can't just have that sort of law and say that's the answer, because the police aren't going to charge charge people who've committed much lesser levels of bullying with that sort of offence. So it tends to be not used as much as a law that was a summary offence would be.
We'll get to the issue of calls on bullying a little later. 96900 693 13 13 32. Not just your children, but yourself. Is the bullying more common? Social media and of adults. The other area, Mr. Nicholson, you've touched on is sexting, with the habit of young, I assume young people, taking compromising or naked photographs of themselves and sending them to friends and then being circulated. Yeah. Now, this is a pretty dangerous area, isn't it?
Well, it's a dangerous area, but it depends at the level we're talking about. If it's two kids sending a photo of themselves, it's a pretty low level problem, and it should be treated that way.
Except for the potential of one of them showing it around.
Well, that's a different issue. Once they do that, then I think that's where the law perhaps should come in. But I don't see much problem about them sending one to another. And you've got a bit of an anomaly too, because remember, adults over 18 can do this pretty well with impunity, as we've seen on some well-publicised occasions in the past. And yet you take a 16 to 18-year-old who's lawfully entitled to engage in sexual activity, is suddenly or potentially guilty of distributing child pornography if they send this sort of material. So it needs a good look.
So what do we do? How do we fix that?
I think there's some suggestions that have come up. The Victorian Parliamentary Committee that Clem Newton-Brown heads has recently recommended there should be a separate offence of sexting, which would only be a minor offence, so that and it would only apply when there was when someone distributed the photographs beyond the without the consent of the other one. And then they've got a second concept that if there is a charge of distributing pornography, it's a defence. If there's only 2 years in age between the people and it was consensual, then it's not an offence.
Bottom line here is, just to wrap it up, is that we've got these areas that have developed around technology. They are being misused. They are potentially dangerous, and we haven't caught up with them.
Oh, that's right. That's really what it is. And that's why I'm hoping this seminar will do something about that.
We'll keep a close eye on the seminar. Thank you very much for coming in.
Pleasure.
The Chair of the National Centre Against Bullying, Alistair Nicholson.